First of all, the first Maamar is Pasha very Geshmak in Maamar. Yeah, the Geshmak L'Shein is there. Geshmak in Yonim. What's the Lashon the Rebbe has there? That a Geshmak Taich. It's the Geshmak Taich.
The whole thing is not the Rebbe.
It's basically the Alter Rebbe's Maamar. Yeah. I think I mentioned this last time. Yeah, that these short Maamarim that were printed, you have these in the throughout the years. Especially you have in the Yuds and the Chafs, where the Rebbe would print a short Maamar of the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe would mamash chazer it came out mila b'mila. There's one you could hear. Nasah kan. The Alter Rebbe Chav Dalet Tevis was on a Sunday. The Rebbe made there were 3 Farbregans. It was Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, Sunday night. Right? Similar to that happened Zeis Chanukah Tavshmem Vav, which is a different parsha connected to the parsha of Sfarim. The Rebbe Farbrang 3 times in 2 days. Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, Sunday night. So Motzei Shabbos, so we're both surprised Farbrangans. Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe came in, and the Rebbe wanted to. The Rebbe started the Maamar at the exact time of the Alter Rebbe's Istalik, because Alter Rebbe was in Stalik Motzei Shabbos, famous lashon of the Tzemach Tzedek. What's the lashon there? Chetzi Shah Asiris. Chetzi Shah, no. Like 10:30 of the Berich. At like 10:25, the Rebbe came in. The Rebbe started ning, and the Rebbe stopped it quickly. And the Rebbe started a Maamar. And the Rebbe Amish Chazer, you could hear it. The Rebbe Chazer is a Maamar of the Alter Rebbe, and like in a different tone. Shleima Zarchi always speaks about this. That Maamar was supposed to set in a different tone. There was face. Yeah, the Chassidim here, Taina that heard the Alter Rebbe. I never heard the Alter Rebbe, so I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, but here you can see. The Rebbe Chazer was kurze Maamar. And it was mamish came out mila b'mila from the Alter Rebbe. So it seems this was also similar to that. Yes, that's the first Maamar. The second Maamar, here's the Maamar of Yutas Kislev, l谊Hamisrah l'shalom ein kates. Right, so we talked about last Maamar, Pada b'shalom. So there, it's interesting that the Pada b'shalom wasn't said on Yutas Kislev; it was said earlier, and it's a different teichen than the regular Pada b'shalom. Yeah, it's a different kav. It's Pada b'shalom Moses Ayin Ches, Tafshin Zayin. This Maamar is l谊Hamisrah, which is a much more unique Dibra Maskal. It's not like Pada b'shalom that there's over 40 Pada b'shaloms by the Rebbe. But le'idach, the teichen here is the regular Pada b'shalom teichen. After the first few sifim, that it speaks a bit of a different sprach, but when it gets into the avoid of the Maamar and the teichen the Maamar is trying to bring out, you get a sense of the classic Pada b'shalom in Yanim. P'diya b'shalom, the shalom between nefesh l'kis and nefesh b'hamis. The higher oilimus, the lower oilimus. Some of the oilim went through Kama Pada v'shaloms of the Rebbe, yeah? Mugadik Pada v'shaloms, Bilti Mugad. The odds are throughout Yeshiva you went through Pada v'shaloms. What's the nikud of the Rebbe's Pada v'shaloms? P'diya v'shaloms. Let me put it this way. What's the chiddush? Right, so most Pada v'shaloms are meyusid on which Pada v'shaloms? They're not Tafshin Dalet, the same Hamshech. I believe it's Mitzayim, a few times Mitzayim, in the Aris there. I'm saying these are not the Rebbe's Aris, but you see Ara 21, 24. It's Mitzayim to the Pada v'shaloms. That's where the Inyanim here are coming from. And what's the regular sprach in the Pada v'shaloms? Let's say before the Rebbe or without the Rebbe's chiddush, because you have this also in the Rebbe's Maamarim. I believe I mentioned it earlier, but it's very important to get this nekudah. In the Mugad it's easier, in the Bilti Mugad it's a bit harder, but it's important to have this nekudah. The Rebbe doesn't just chazer chassidus. Of course, by the Rebbe it's called mechazer chassidus, but by the Rebbe there's always a nekudah as a chiddush. The Rebbe can be chazering the same Maamar, the same inyanim. Huh? I don't want to go there. I'm sure there is. Maybe it's not just chiddush, but there is probably a lot more in a diuk. But bichlal, it's in the Mugad, so there, during the Haggah, so the way it was written is it was written in a way to boil it, the Rebbe's chiddush, which you could also miss, but it's clear. In the built-in Mugad, it's not always there because the Rebbe basically chazer the Maamar with some shinuyim and a change of pace and a change of order and being medayik in different inyanim. But it's important to try to chap, and as you go through the Maamarim, you start picking up these nekudas. So bichlal, what's retzich in the Pada v'shalom Maamarim? P'diya b'shalom. What's the p'diya b'shalom? There's nefesh l'kis. That's so you can avoid it, yeah? Nefesh l'kis, nefesh b'hamis. Nefesh l'kis, interesting, l'kos. Nefesh b'hamis is the chabehema. and then you want to do P'diyah B'Shalim. What's P'diyah B'Shalim? So there's different kinds of P'diyah. The fact that there's P'diyah means, right, you only have to free someone when they're captured or conquered before. So what's being captured? In a Mulchama. What's the Mulchama? Shas Tzloisa, Shas Krava. When we're davening, the Nefesh Elikis tries to have dialogue with the Nefesh Bahamis. So that's one oifin of communication between Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Bahamis. Tefillah. What are the other oifanim? This brought a lot in the Pada B'Shaloms. Torah. Tefillah, Torah. And in Torah, there's Nigla, there's Chassidus. Right? And each Pada B'Shalom has another, kunz and another shnit. But it goes into these inyan, basically the conversation that goes on between the Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Bahamis. And the Nefesh Elikis is trying to be mehapich, to change, to influence the Nefesh Bahamis. And the Nefesh Bahamis should also have a shaykhis. The door can be closed, or?
You close it once.
Huh?
You close it really long.
Oh, you could leave it a drop, no? Also, this hour, I don't think anyone's coming. So, right, so that's the story of Pada V'Shalom. Right, this really goes back. What's the Av Melacha, of Pada V'Shalom? Where do the Pada V'Shalom go back to? Most of them trace back to the Mittel Rebbe's Pada V'Shalom. It's the Tes Kislev. The Pada V'Shalom. It's in what's it called in Shar Tefillah? Huh? Yeah, but it's a section on Tefillah, right? Pada V'Shalom. So there has the Nikud, there's different levels of P'diyah B'Shalom, and then in P'diyah, and then the highest level is Yechida. Mitzad Yechida, there's the ultimate P'diyah. All right, that's the general mahal. Why? Because Mitzad Yechida, there's no Mulchama Bichlal, there's no Menagid, Bevua de Bevua Leslo, all the other levels, including Chaya, there is a Lu'umazeh, there is some other side. In Yechida, there's no other side. So Mitzad Yechida is Pada B'Shalom. Fine, this is the general mahal. By the Rebbe, many Maamarim and Sichos boil down to one question, and the question leads to multiple answers that are all saying the same point, but from different perspectives and different directions. What's the question? The shaila is, Pada and B'Shalom don't go together. Shalom means that there's total Shalom. Pada means that he was captured before. So Pada means there's a Mulchama. Shalom is there no Mulchama. And the way Chassidus says, what's Pada B'Shalom? Yechida. But if we're thinking about Yechida, in the world of Yechida, there's no argument, there's no fight. Right? A Yid v'slept Yechida shebenefesh, has no Yitzhahara, has no Nefesh Bahamis, has no Ritzoy Nizarim. Ich will say Garnis, ich will not say Gan Eden, ich will not say Lambhaba, ich will merit das dich allein. Now he doesn't have Nefesh Bahamis, he also doesn't have a Nefesh Elikis, a regular Nefesh Elikis, doesn't have the Metzias Nefesh Elikis. He's in ganzen Bat. Yechida. So, if it's a guy that's taka living in a level of Yechida, the whole conversation doesn't start. He doesn't need a Padiyah. He was never captured. He's Shvisa Shivya, yeah? There's no issue, there's no war. Elamai, we're not talking about someone that's left with Yechida. We're talking about somebody that struggles. The Beinani. There's a Yid here that struggles, that has a Nefesh Bahamis. What level of Nefesh is he dealing with? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, L'cher, not Yechida. But not only that, because you could say he's a Beinani, so he has a struggle, but he always wins. But L'cher not, because he doesn't always win, because you need a Padiyah. Right? There's a Padiyah. That means the Nefesh Bahamis here has a voice, is actually doing something. Maybe not in Ma'aseh, but in Machshavah, Tutepes. So if that's the case, we have to go to battle and take him out. Right? Not every day does Syria just disappear and it's Pasuach, Maimer Pasuach, yeah? Maimer Pasuach would be verkehrt, Maimer Sassen. So what's the P'diyah B'Shalom, right? Some of you all recognize this question in Pada B'Shalom. What's the answer? There's so many answers, the odds are you won't get it wrong. And if it's not written, it could be a new answer. So there are many answers, and pretty much every Pad of Shalom, and definitely the Mugge, but many of the built-in Mugges as well. And there's many Pad of Shalom. There's Tes Kislev, Yud Tes Kislev, the Oid. It ends up coming to a certain nekuda where Haguf is the Chiddush. That's the Chiddush. The Chiddush is Meret Taka Wegen a Mensch that does struggle. Yeah, a Yid that's not living on the level of Yechida. Nefesh, Ruach Neshama, maybe Chaya, but even Nefesh. Not only Tavshin Chav Beis, the Rebbe has a lot of Geshmak Oisius, Padre Shalom Chav Beis, when the Rebbe said the three Maamarim, the only time there was a three Maamarim, so last Maimer, then the Fabrengen, this is Mugge, look at Vav. So the Rebbe says here that even mitzad nefesh he's not winning. He's mamish. He's in the klippus. He's struggling even to maintain the lowest level of nefesh. Never mind the yechida. Even there, and dafka there, the yechida could be poil. How is it poil? Here there are many different biyurim. Machshava b'nei yechida, you have the lashon in the Maamarim. Mispeinos b'nei yechida. In one Maimer, the lashon is that Taka, we're not talking about someone that's doing the avodah of yechida. He's doing a very basic level of avodah. But the pnimius of every avodah that a yid does is yechida. How can a yid do that avodah yechida? Because even the most basic Kabbalah's oil, where is the koyach for Kabbalah's? A very simple yid that struggles, and right now he's in Yitzrei Boyer Ka'esh, he's out there in the shuk, and he's dealing with the biggest taivas, and for a moment he holds himself back. Maybe later he's not even matzliach, but right now he held himself back. How did he do it? Perichav Hey Tanya. That's no Mesiras Nefesh, right? That he's a Yid. Mesiras Nefesh comes from where? From Yechida. Every level of Bittul comes from Yechida. That's another There are many different Biyurim, which it's not a Shavash Shabineim is, that's the Vart. We're dealing with the simple guy. We're not dealing with the Psahelik, Grace, which is the simple Mashmos in the Pad of Shalom. In the original Pad of Shalom, it says, who's on the level of Yechida? The Rashi B'nai Yisrael, Lashon that the Rebbe quotes from Maamarim and Sichos, the Rashi B'nai Yisrael Shabbatayim, I've got the exact Lashon there, Rashi Alpha Yisrael, I think. Yeah, every Yid has a Shaykhis, every Yid's a Nitzutz of the Neshama Klali, so it has a Shaykhis to Yechid, and every Yid can use the Yechid. So the framing of Pad Shalom by the Rebbe is the access that we have to Yechida to bring it down into the lowest dargis. Which now, right, we're trying to speak a shtickle the sprach of the Maamarim that we've learned already, which you see in many of the Maamarim, this nekuda, right? The isnasos atzmis to bring into the isnasos b'poil. So how does that translate into our Maamar? Our Maamar, the Rebbe doesn't use that sprach, and the Rebbe doesn't go to Yechida, that's in other Maamarim, but what's the Rebbe saying here? What's the nekuda of this Maamar? Or this is long Maamar, it's 8-9 pages. Where's the vart of the Maamar? Where do you see the vart of the Maamar? We could blur out all the voices. We could play with the voices. Where do you say? The beginning of Dalid? Yeah, not Mufra. Meaning the Hasbara Sa'inyin is in many, in Askala more in the beginning, in Avodah more at the end. But the Nekuda L'Cheir is Taka here. What does it say in the beginning of Dalid? Page 38. Shetachlis ha'avoida yisha yirida d'sfiras ha'malchos tifal aliyah g'doyle b'yoyser. Taka, there's a yirida. Malchos is going down. Yeah, Malchos is the shayrish of Alma Diskalia. Malchos, on the one hand, allows the channel of the Getlicha energy, right, to be able to go into Inyonim Tachtoinim, to get everywhere through all kinds of Tzimtzumim Lumineim, but it could go to the lowest levels. On the other hand, when you allow the Hashpahs to go to such low places, there's a lot of Yinikas Achitzainim. Yinikas Achitzainim, right? It's like you have a yeshiva. Should I go there? Right, so you have a yeshiva. So you could keep the yeshiva, elitist yeshiva, the top 20, 50, 70. But then you could say no. Elikus is not mugdir to the top 50%, 70%. Kumin Yid. Has to go down to every single person. It's not shaykh to them. Fine, so you have to cater to them and make a mizgeres and then teach them chaymer that makes sense and on their level. So two things happen there. One thing happens is that you create a tzimtzum which enables the ashpa to reach even the lowest people that are not shaykh to the higher areas, the higher limud. But at the same time, what happens then when you open up the door, you open the window for the lower 20%? You get second time, right? It's pretty simple. You open up the door, so the hashpa comes down there, but once it's there, who knows where it goes, right? It's not going to a natural keli. It's not going to a place that it's comfortable in. It starts to charankrich, right? And it's simple. It's the evan shebekesser melech. Once you try to give it to the sick kid, it goes all over the place. Chassidus valgert in the gasin v'chol. So on the one hand, there's a big yerida going on over here. Through the big yerida, there's a big aliyah. What's the aliyah? The aliyah is that even in Omid Iskalia and in the lower worlds, you bring the Maimer Sasum into the Maimer Pasuach. Hainu Shatia Avoida Baifin Shal Birur Shaloya de Mulchama, Elo Birur Betachlis, Bitul Bimitzias, Ad Shanisha Raka Mitzias Delikos, Ve'ein Shum Mitzias Biladei. There's two ways of living life. There's living life in a way of birur, and there's living life in a way of gilui. What's Lashon uses here? Gilui. The general Lashon. He would say here, or basically, the person doesn't have to work and have a mulchama, or earlier in the previous page, right? There's oifen of mulchama, iskafia, bitul ayesh, and the other oifen is an oifen of machshava. Derech mulchama, derech shalom. This is what I want to do. Am I constantly struggling? Or it's natural. Tzadikim, vali tshuva. Yeah. And here's the shaila. So there's p'diya b'derech mulcham, p'diya b'derech shalom. There's two ways of living. There are those that have to constantly fight and struggle. And even when they're about themselves, it's bitul ayesh. Why? Because they're living in all of this galia. The sham is the biyah. Then the sham is netzilis. Moshe, leipzig time and begavei. Everything's open, everything's clear. It's like v'chinas machshava, just like machshava stays in the person and never leaves. So all the nivroim, anything that was created from the Eibusher's machshava, has a sense of unity, right? There's no sense of individualized self, of something different from the Eibusher. So in such a world, the Eibusher and the Yid are one. There's nothing standing in the way. So that's shalom, that's mulchama. What's padav shalom? What's the kunz? Or in this case, in this maamar, what's the marba misra? The marba misra is that the Omad Iskalia Chevreman, the Chevreman down here, the guy that does have to go through mulchama, that constantly is struggling, he accesses shalom. He has the gilui of emstum. What's the shail? How does that happen? So what happens? Are we taking the mem pasuach out and making him to mem saso? We're taking the guy out of Omad Iskalia and throwing him into Omad Iskasia? No, because if we do that, then it's missing the point. The whole point is the Yerida should be in Olam Hazeh, in Omad Iskalia, right? But if it's Omad Iskalia, Mizach Tacher is B'dach Begilui. Mizach Tacher is Begilui. Begilui in this case means he's nifrat. He has a sense of self, a sense of an individual. He's not like Dogim Shebayam that are completely covered by the Yam. In later years, Rebbe Geretta, even Dogim Shebayam, that's a Chassidus Dogim Shebayam. Right? It says the mashal here. Sheparshim meimakim chiyosim yadei meisim. But later the Rebbe said even Dogim Shebayam fart is nicht the ultimate bittul, because Dogim Shebayam it's Dogim Shebayam, and they take them out of the water. They have a few moments till they die. So it's fart nicht das. That's Ma'im Liyom Mechasim, the Sima Rambam's Rebbe Geretta. Ma'im Liyom Mechasim. The Ma'im Liyom Mechasim, the ocean, right? The ocean bed is covered by water. Can you divide water from the ocean? The ocean is the water. It's one thing. It's not fish in the water, and the fish are bottled to the water. It's Vasar Eleh. So how do we bring this Omad Iskasi into Omad Iskali? Meaning, I'm a Omad, most of us, I'll speak for myself. Yeah, we're Omad Iskali Yidden. How do you all of a sudden have this Gilui of Machshav? And it shouldn't be in a way of Dibur, a way of Nifrat. Fine. So he says that, and then he goes on. Based on the Hemshech HaMaimer, what would you say? What's the word? Right? That's the Nekud he's trying to say. That's the Nekud. The Nekud he's trying to say is Biru B'Tachlis, the ultimate, Bittul b'mitzias, that there's only elikus. Not Mulcham. How do you have a mitzias that's in the yesh, and at the yesh, should there hear that he's called Kol Elikus? Beginning of Sivav, Mary the Galoshin, V'hine Kol Inyan, at the bottom of 40, Kol Inyan Shebemesa Mashiach Deirish Hachana Ba'avoida B'zman HaGalus. Shezeh Nasah Kli Lahamshich U'Lekabel Eser Mashiach. This is one of the Rebbe's big yisoides. Aבtzon, this is Tanya Perek Lamvav Lamed. Right, the Maseinu Avoida Seinu Mesach Zman HaGalus is what brings Mashiach. But the Rebbe takes that vart in Tanya and takes it to learns it much more literal than even Pshat in Tanya. Where the Rebbe says that if everything that happens when Mashiach comes is an outgrowth, is just a gilui, is the schar mitzvah of our avodas managolos, so it's like bala lamd v'nimtza lamid. In order to reach Mashiach, it's through zman and golos. Fine, but you're telling me that golos brings us Mashiach. So that means that if I want to know what the avodah in golos is, let me look at Mashiach. That's the vart of Kurtus Yosh Deres Chassidus. Mischara neida mehosa. The schar of Afatzon Mayonis is Mashiach. Yefutzim Mayinisach Chutza brings Osimar Malchut Mashiach. So you want to know what Chassidus is? Look at what Mashiach is. Mashiach is Gili Pnimius Atik, so Chassidus is Pnimius Atik. Sitting here, what's our Avodah today? So until now, it was like, okay, Hayoim Lasoy Sam Lamachar L'Chabal Schara. Mashiach. Hilchas of Mashiach. Today we have to do Avodah of Golos. The Rebbe says, no. How do you know what the Hayoim Lasoy Sam is? Lamachar L'Chabal Schara. Check what the schar is, which is Mashiach, and now our Avodah has to be Mashiach D'Gavodah. So we have to have Mashiach D'Gavodah. What's the Mashiach D'Gavodah? What's going to be when Mashiach comes? Shalom. So the Avodah today has to be Shalom. Avodah B'derech Muhammad, that's from the past. Now we have to be in the Avodah B'derech Shalom. Heinz Dr. Mittel Rebbe, famous Sikh and Tafshin Bey is Ches Cheshvan, that now there has to be the Avodah of Moichin Be'etzem. The Bisman HaGalus, all we have is the Eretz Shiva Amam, the Eretz Sheva Umis. Last law we will also have Keni Krizik and Moini, the Gimel Umis. What's the difference between the 7 and the 3? That's Midas and that's Moichin. But Zeh Gufe, not only Midas, it's Moichin that we have as Shayachim LeMidas. Last law will be Moichin Be'etzem. Right? This is the language, very similar to the language we have here in Sif Hey. The Pnimius HaMoichin is Chetenis HaMoichin. No, sorry, in Sif, what's in Sif Vav? Where's the Moichin Shayachim LeMidas? No, it's in Sif Hey. Yeah. So now we already have to start the Avodah of Moichin Be'etzem. Right, so this is similar language in this Maamer. So was Montman from the Mensch? The Pnimius HaMoichin. Especially Pnimius being like the Pnimius Tainuk. You did the second half of the Maamer, yeah? Very Geshmak L'Shoinas there, how to have Shalom, how not to take things personal. Yeah, there's a lot of Geshmak Aveda there, yeah? When your Moichin's in charge, then you're also able to handle Hafchim, you're able to live with opposites, etc., etc. But what happens weiter? In the regular sprach, Pada B'Shalom, speaks on many of the Maamarim. So what's the P'tiyah B'Shalom? What's the P'tiyah? The Nefesh Elikis says Avos Hashem. It's natural. Nefesh Elikis lept Elikus. Yeah. Hecher von uns. Olam Hazeh is irrelevant, right? And the Midas are only there to Misharis the Moichin, to Misharis the Karin Elikus, etc. The Nefesh Bahamis is lept in Olam Hazeh. He's interested in Taivas Olam Hazeh. He's interested in self-preservation, right? Everything is, what's the lashon here? Every color Reitzer Kol Inyanim, bottom 41, La'atzmai. Hergish Atzmai. It's all about zich. It's all about self. He cares about himself. You can imagine when Nefesh Elikis meets a Nefesh Bahamis and they try to have a conversation. I think even two people. You have people that are more idealistic and people that are very selfish and people that are hedonistic. They try to have a conversation. It never works out. It's like, the guy's trying to convince his friend to go on with him. He's like, yeah, it's a good place. Well, it's an exotic shlichus. It's like, well, what's the shaychus? The shliach needs us. Yeah, let me check. there's no conversation. That's even like in Hechel Dargis and Kedusha. Yeah, it's a Cheshvan. So Yeder Ein by Sich Nefesh Elikim Nefesh Bahamis. Nefesh Elikim trying to speak Nefesh Bahamis. It's a Cheshvan. So what happens? How does the conversation happen? Shas Sloisa Shas Krov. So that's in Chassidus, Nefesh Elikim is to be yored to Nefesh Bahamis and start talking Nefesh Bahamis on its level, in its language. What's the language of Nefesh Bahamis? Zich. Now, how do you come to somebody that his whole context is zich and tell him Ein Milvade? Huh? I'm saying, you guys are on Tektim for many years. You probably do this every day, you know. So, right, but you have different biyurim. But the nekudas advarim is that you have to speak to it on its level. What's one of the nekudas is Nefesh Bahamis talk all about zich. So how do you speak to Nefesh Bahamis? You have to talk to him in its language. You enjoy Elam Hazeh. What do you enjoy? Right? And what's Elam Hazeh? And where does Elam Hazeh come from? Right? And all the Yonim Elam Hazeh, it's all Shirayim, the Shirayim, from the Ashpa Islamayla. Right? You have to speak to basically the language of Kovetz Elikim Li Toiv. Right? Talk to it on its level, in its language. Bring it, that's one in another Nikud is you have to bring very practical dugmois from Elam Hazeh Agashbi. Dugmois that it could relate to, that it could understand. Nefesh Elikim doesn't need all the mishalim of Chassidus. Nefesh Elikim doesn't need all the mishalim. Nefesh Elikim like almost like, okay, move on. What are the mishalim for? Nefesh Elikim has the nimshal. Nefesh Elikim is ret alikus. Nefesh Elikim is living in alikus. Nefesh Bahamis lives in the context of Elam Hazeh. So you have to give it kashu stick with the gemara that it can relate to. Okay, machshava, dibur, machshava is still in my head. Dibur, once you talk, right? What's lashon here? Yeah, once you say something, it's recorded. You can't take it back. Right? So also you have some shalom interest. Now you can relate. Now likus, okay, right? So we're all coming through Elam Hazeh. So Nefesh Elikim has to go down. So you can imagine for Nefesh Elikim, it's a very big yerida. Like imagine a Rabbi Talmud. It's much more than a Rabbi Talmud. It's a completely different conversation. And definitely to start speaking in a sprach of it, li toiv, what makes sense, what's geschmack. Nefesh Elikim like ein milvade. Per Yotanya, keman derachim, sar avi v'imo, you masar nafshi l'misu alayu. There's no Gilali Kusenwelt. There's no other interests. So that's the big Yerida. Comes the Maamarim and says, right, that's one side of the coin. There's a very big Yerida, and that Yerida is the Mochama, right? Because you're entering enemy territory and you're speaking enemy sprach. Like you're talking sprach of Taivas. All right, what's the whole parashas var that if the big Bali Taivas know the Geshmak and Daming, they will leave. Right, but that's Nefesh Bahamis. But here's a very interesting point. If you look at it on the one hand, it's at one perspective, there's a massive yerida going on, and you're entering the place of Mulchama by speaking Sprach of Nefesh Bahamis. And part of the word of Mulchama is, as it's said in Sif. End of Sif Beis, when you enter a Mulchama, there's no, what are they called now in Eretz Yisrael? It's a chon muchlat, it's nitzach and gomer, yeah? It's never nitzach and gomer. Eretz Yisrael is a massive, you didn't die. You always have soldiers dying. You never fully win. And epis is geblieben. You're dealing with Nefesh Bahamis. There's Nefesh Bahamis there. There's enemy territory. You didn't turn Nefesh Bahamis into someone that's kol kuli oyev Hashem and there's no other interest and no other biases, etc. But there's another inyan that's happening. This is on the second to last page, 42. Middle of the page, the avoid there's last is shalom p'mali shamayla p'mali shamato. There's a shalom b'nefesh l'kis nefesh bahamis. That after the neshama is neslavish and the guf nefesh bahamis. What's tachas avoda? Yeah, the line starts nefesh l'kis is spoinin v'likos. Loyrak idei yonim nefesh l'kis elagan idei yonim shal nefesh bahamis. Right, this we know. That's all the ganze tachas. That's the whole avoda. V'yiseiram izeh shaydei is boinus. B'yom shechum nefesh l'bahamis hani yonim gashmim. Nasis gam avona v'asoga the nefesh l'kis v'vchinas hasoga muchshis mamish. K'mar shekos l'su marim eineichem u'ru mibara eila haynu sheni toisef v'nefesh alikis sho'inin d'mibara eila ye'etzla leirak ba'ifin shel havana v'asaga b'seichol al gam ba'ifin shel re'iyah al derech re'iyah muchshis. That even Nefesh Bahamis could understand in Teva Liki, and then it goes into the Midas, etc., etc. Something very interesting happens when we enter the space of Nefesh Bahamis. If the Nefesh Likis will never go to the world of Nefesh Bahamis, never try to have a conversation, it doesn't look at God. The Nefesh Likis is trying to run away from Gashmis. The Nefesh Likis is is always in isolation. He's always trying to remove himself. It's like Chanish Lakis is more about Seichel than Midas. Ish Sichli doesn't like the surroundings, doesn't want to be more of an Abrius. Nefesh Lakis is living on a mountaintop. There's a ganzen Movdul Mikol Yoni Olam Hazeh. But now he has to deal with Nefesh Bahamis. You have to speak on the you enter Olam Hazeh. When you enter the world of Olam Hazeh, the biggest Yerida, something unique happens. That for the first time he accesses the Maila of Re'iyah. Real Re'iyah. Why real Re'iyah? Because the Chayla, Nefesh Likis starts off with Re'iyah, right? The previous page, what does it say? The line starts in Nefesh Likis, in the middle of the page, page 41. Shemitzadzeh Nefesh Likis b'chlalusa roya umavino masiga likus. Right? Because which level of the Nefesh is roya? Chachma. And then umavino masiga, which is avana masaga, which is bina. Right? So the Yesod Nefesh Likis is in Chachma Shem Nefesh as a Re'iyah. Right? Chachma sees things, right? It's not an analysis, so broken down, right? Havana v'asaga. It's an intuition. It's a zeta zachid. It's a cook, but it's not a Re'iyah muchshitz. What's Re'iyah muchshitz? Re'iyah muchshitz is when you see it with your actual eyes. Now, from there, the cross will be Re'iyah muchshitz in Ruch. We'll get there in a second. Olam Hazeh is a very physical world, and it's a very low world. But one of the big miles Olam Hazeh has is the Nekud of Re'iyah. The power of Re'iyah is unparalleled. When you see something, you're trapped in it. Right? We know that Ein Adei Mashmiya L'Re'iyah and Ein Nasah, and once an aid sees something, you'll never be able to unsee it. You can't unsee it. I could explain to you, and you'll understand 100%. You could learn something for 20 years. Someone could convince you otherwise. You saw something, you're never changing your mind. But it's not just that. It's not just you saw something, you're convinced of its truth. The pu'ula on the nefesh, the shaychus la'adam, that Re'iyah creates, is in a whole different oif. You have the Talmud says that why do I understand what my Rav taught me better than everybody else? Because the Re'isi me'achayre. Because they never saw him. I saw him from the back. If I would see him mikadmise, if I would see him if I would see his face, Re'iyas panav, it will change everything. L'chayra Re'iyas panav. Right. Well, what's the big difference if you're listening to audio, you watch a video? Well, what's the greatest chiluk? So Chaver will say, "Forget. I listen to audio. It's there's more time. You're not even distracted. You can just close your eyes. There's something about Re'iyah. There's something about Re'iyah that's poyel. You just had the machlikas one. Huh? You can also do 2.0. You can't do it in video. It's no. I'm talking about the Rebbe's for bringing. You can do 2.0 on that. They're probably Re'iyah is just going to take it away. Right, Re'iyah has poyel a pu'ula pnimis on the nefesh. Right, all the Biur Mechsidis, that there's different shittas in Re'iyah. If it's the vitzutzis that leave the eyes and come to the zach, or the zach get the rein and the egg, that's the science of it. Then the Kovetz and Resources is we see. You don't have to explain. You don't have to give a reason for it. The reality is you see that when you see something, it has the strongest pull on the person. Even a person that's a very, very spiritual person, a person that's a very deep, very seichodik mensch, and lives in a world of ideas. You experience something. How do you experience it? The primary often of experiencing something is by seeing it. The chosh re'iyah. You saw something. You saw something. Someone saw something as a child. It's lo yishachach la'ad. It's something that becomes part of you. It's part of your identity. Not only you don't forget it, it becomes part of who you are. So what's so this is what happens like this. Nefesh Elikis goes down, has to start speaking Sprach of Nefesh Bahamis. But it comes with a gift. The gift is when you start speaking the Sprach of Nefesh Bahamis, you start speaking the Sprach of Re'iyah. And the Kesher Telikus for the first time becomes a Kesher not only based on Seichel and not only based on Re'iyah Ruchnis, it's based on Re'iyah Chushis. You know, it's able to actually, what do you see? You don't see the Eibush there. But what's the Sprach? You bring in Yonim Gashmi. You see the Eibush through the vast skies. You see the Eibush through the sun that comes up in the morning. You see the Eibush through the Tzvah Shamayim that's Kayam Be'ish and the Tzvah Aretz that's Kayam Be'min. You see the Tmidius, the Nitzchias in this world. Or you look at Elam Hazeh and it's like, one second, how did this come about? How could this world Vanin Kumtes? And then you realize Eibush had to create it. Yesh Me'ayin. But when you come to Yesh Me'ayin, where do we get to in Elikos? Back to the first Maamarim into Zion and the next few Maamarim. Dafke Olam Haz, Dafke Gashmias tells you about Atzmos. All the Dargis Ruchnis, all the Re'iyah Ruchnis that you have, only know about Giluyim. You see the different Giluyim of the Eibush there, the flaw of the Eibush there, the Koiches of the Eibush there. You see Elam Hazeh Gashmi is Yesh Me'ayin. Yesh Me'ayin can only come from one place, can only come from the Eibush there himself, only from Atzmos. You see Elam Hazeh, you see Elam Hazeh B'Shayt Mitzuyusim Atzmosei. Mitzuyusim Atzmosei can only come from Atzmos. So Dafke in Elam Hazeh you access Atzmos. Dafke in Elam Hazeh you access it through the Mile of Re'iyah. So the Nefesh Elikis has to start speaking the Sprach of Re'iyah. So even before, the way he says, even before it explains it to the Nefesh Bahamis, already the Nefesh Elikis comes to a new darga, comes to a new Kesher Telikos. Right, Kesher through Asaga Mukhshis Mam, Re'iyah Mukhshis and Asaga Mukhshis. When you start having Re'iyah Mukhshis, also your Asaga becomes, right? When you see, think about this. You're learning about a certain idea. You're learning about a certain machine, a certain gadget, whatever it is, a certain philosophy for a very long time, and then all of a sudden you see it. Yeah, you see a video of it. You see what you come face to face with it. Your previous it's not only now there was Hasaga, now you have Re'iyah. What you understood until now is now it's included in that Re'iyah Mukhshis. It's also Hasaga Mukhshis. It's real. It's personal. It's you sense it. You feel it. That's what he says. That's the big milo that happens when Nefesh Elikis comes down Nefesh Bahamis. So now what happens is, what's the shalom? You have now shalom in Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Bahamis. He doesn't fully explain it. But the vart that he's saying is, so number one, there's a certain hashva, right? Both of them now have a shaykhis mukhshis telikos. Maybe. It doesn't say clear, but maybe that's part of the vart. That there's a certain, they both in the same space. And another Indian is, if you're focusing on the fact that Nefesh Elikis have to go down to Nefesh Bahamis and deal with Elam Hazeh and the Khair takes away the purity of Elikos, yeah, the Khair is a big Yerida. That's the Muhammad. You're focusing on the Muhammad. But if you focus on the Nikud of the Re'iyah Mukhshis, Farkeret, the Re'iyah Mukhshis, Sayed Nefesh Elikis, Sayed Nefesh Bahamis, it's the ultimate Kesher to Likos. It's not a Yerida. That's the ultimate Kesher a person can come to. So yeah, there is a process there of the Khair of Muhammad, but bring into the Maamar Pasuach, bring the Maamar Sasim. The steam of the Chosim, the deepest Kesher, the Kesher of the Sasim to Nishmasa, connected to Nishmasa Deirais, the Sasim Nishmasa, to Sasim Deirais, and Sasim Kuchabrichu, it comes dafka through Re'iyah. And that happens down in Elam Hazagash. And that's the Maamar Sasim, and that's the, in other words, dafka in the Oma Diskalia, there's the ultimate Oma Diskasia. Why? Through Re'iyah. And that's the little bit you see in this Maamar. Through this Re'iyah, you're able to reach the highest levels. And through Re'iyah, you're able to have that in Olam that in the Nefesh Bahamis, you're able to have the Gilui HaMoichin and the Pnimius HaMoichin, which is connected to Re'iyah, where therefore there's no stira between the different kavim, and your midas will follow your moichin, not your moichin following your midas, etc. How? When you come to the space, when you come to this nikud of Re'iyah. Because Re'iyah gives you that, because even though Re'iyah, why am I coming to Re'iyah? Because I'm more physical, right? Remember, it's part of the Yerida. Because I'm physical, because I care about Elohim Hazeh, because no matter how much you explain to me and how much seichel you give me and how much shiurim, it doesn't make sense to me, and still my eyes my taivas that are come from my eyes are much stronger, so I have to deal with what I see. But then when you hit the place of re'iyah, there's the choizer, boomerangs. And nafkin here, you reach the highest aliyah. And you have the deepest kesher that's able to transcend all the inyanim till that one. And as they cook days, that's the Maamarim. There's another malach. That's what it seems.